So it has been months in the making. We have made a baby in the process. And now I am ready to reveal the plan to fix our land, the scientifically tuned permaculture plan to deal with this beautiful and yet massive undertaking, which is our property. After my education with the Regenerative Backyard Blueprint, what Shades of Green put together is far more than I would have thought. And all of the plant list and the design and implementation to deal with our water issues, to deal with the sun that we have, to deal with the invasive species that we have. It's gonna be a process, but I think it's one you're gonna dig. Hi from the tiny house.
Hi. Hi. How are you? How's your baby?
The baby is good.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to talk through this finally. Let me just jump right in. I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see this.
Here's your property.
Gets turned into a graph paper.
Totally. Look at all of that. It's crazy. So today we've got your planting plan here and then the associated plant list. So this is organized by types of trees, shrubs, vines, and perennials, and then the common name and botanical name of each of those.
Great.
That represents everything that's selected here. So pattern level, you still have the canopy where you have the canopy, and the topo of your land is the same. Kind of thinking about these spaces as like productive orchard, food forest, and annual beds in the front. Then some like really beautiful foundation beds that also serve as a water system. This cut flower patch here on the hill where great afternoon sun, questionable soil, so things that'll be beautiful but not necessarily edible. Here we have a little meditation mandala, and then woodland gardens kind of all in the periphery here and here. And
yeah. Did you put a path in the little triangle off of the driveway too?
I did.
Nice.
Kind of like a little hiding space. And then a medicine garden here in the back. Let's dive in. Starting at the street, to help with some of the water that's running off the road, the first thing we have here is a big old rain garden. So this is dug out. It's a basin that's dug out, and it has a level berm on the downhill side. So with the soil that's excavated from this space, we would pile up on the downhill side on contour, so it's level on all points, so that the water that does eventually wash over this washes over evenly, and it's slowed down significantly by this rain garden. This right here, this brown thing, is the berm.
Great.
The dashed line with X's represents fencing.
Oh, okay, great.
So you would excavate about 1.5 feet, use the excavated soil for the berm, and then you would fill back in that rain garden basin using 1/2 foot of 57 stone gravel on the bottom. And then on top of that, 1 foot of engineered soil, which is a really porous soil blend. And that allows the water to perk into the soil really well. And then that would be planted with a bunch of elderberry. So those are going to love the like full sun, influx of water, provide, food for birds, medicine for people. So that's
we already have a bunch of elderberry over in the weed wall.
Yeah.
But you can't get to any of it. You can see the big blooms, and then you can see the birds eating the berries, but that's it. You can't get there.
Elderberry is one of the things that live stakes really well. So you could try to take cuttings from what you already have or just start fresh. This whole like orchard and annual vegetable productive space, I've recommended fencing it in with like a really simple wildlife fence inside of this space. The first thing we've got along the road here are some perennial vegetables. So this is a big bed of asparagus, and then this is a big bed of sunchoke here, and then spice bush and mountain mint on this side. So these are all things that can also handle like some water runoff. So it'd be like kind of a first defense against runoff from the gravel driveway, and then also just growing food right on the edge there. And then inside the fence, we've got a trellis right here for raspberries. This would be raspberry trellis. And then all of these are hugel beds on contour for annual vegetables. So with like 2 foot, I think this is like 3 foot pathways. So the idea is that you would mound up and build pretty substantial, like tall hugel beds. and then have like the pathways just be like mown, the like one
literally
length of the mower.
One length of the mower. Beautiful.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
So those would be your mown pads, and that's a great way to not have to worry about a bunch of mulch and weeds popping up. You just know you're going to mow the paths, and then you've got all your garden beds here. Okay, and then also within this fenced in spaces, this orchard. So this is kind of building on what you've already got. So the idea is that like with the mown paths here, you could just keep like one mown like harvest path through here, but allow like a seasonal flush of beneficial ground cover to come forward. So depending on the time of year, you might see crimson clover or buckwheat or cereal rye, Austrian winter pea, and all of these things will help build soil and help suppress weeds and support the production of the orchard because they'll attract pollinators as well. So blueberries, these are pomegranates right here. This is your existing peach and fig. This row right there, oh, this is the pomegranate, I'm sorry. And this is chestnut right here. This is chinkopin chestnut, which is more of an understory chestnut. It's a really awesome native. And this is at 20 scale.
Still pretty big. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty big. We've got space for another peach that you have already right here. This is the fig, a pear, another pear for cross-pollination, persimmon here, apple, another apple, mulberry, red bud, and another apple right here.
And that's the existing mulberry that we have too, right there.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Is the red bud there for attracting pollinators in the spring? Yeah.
Yeah, it attracts pollinators. The flowers are edible, so they're fun for like cocktails or decorating cakes or just making a salad look really pretty. But they also fix nitrogen. They're in the legume family, so they're a great one. It's nice to have like some variety. You know, most fruit trees are in the rose family, so I like to throw in a couple things that are different to kind of break up the pathway for disease and pests. Outside of the fence here, this is an additional rain garden right here. So actually you could put in like an overflow in this rain garden, like a big atrium grate attached to like a 6-inch pipe that goes underground to another rain garden here to try to redirect that water away from the central growing space. And this is planted with pawpaw along the whole and hazelnut. So there's like 3 pawpaws and 3 hazelnut, which will all really appreciate that kind of like low lying, but still sunny right on the edge of the forested area. And then behind that, just a big bramble of blackberry as well. So yeah, so this is the kind of like big kind of, you know, like farm.
It is a farm.
It's a farm. Yeah, it is.
Oh my gosh. Like, yeah, you know, I mean, we walk out there and it's a big lawn and it takes Corbett 2 hours to mow.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I know it's big, but now seeing the way the vegetation, the way you've spaced it out, and then remembering that's a 20-foot scale.
Yeah.
My gosh. This is crazy and super cool, and like things to keep me busy for a lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. And like I always say, like cover cropping is like your friend when you have this much annual productive space. Like you can feel free to throw down like cover crop if you're not going to get to plant something out one season, or if you're traveling, like that just helps everything. So yeah.
That's really cool.
Awesome. And then using the this here along the outside, like kind of under the peach and fig and before the dense vegetation in the stream, I've just specified a tall grass meadow mix from Brownstone Seed, which is an amazing seed company.
Okay, great. So that's not that would not be a mowing area.
Correct.
Okay, a meadow.
Yeah. So this is a great seed mix that would do really well here. And yeah, I would just let this totally grow up. As you can mow it like once or twice a year to keep it from, you know, to knock down all of the like woody species that are trying to bring it back to forest. But it's not like a regular mowed area.
Got it.
And then, so as we move closer to the house, there's the little like playhouse here and the cedar.
Troll house is what we call
the
it.
troll house. Right. Existing pine, existing Japanese maple. So there's like a nice little shade kind of hangout space here. And I was just formalizing a little bit of a front lawn area through here. So there's room to spread out and play. And then a chicken coop on like utilizing the fence from the orchard and then just building out a chicken coop, a stationary chicken coop that has like a nice big run right here for them to hang out.
And, you know, Corbett had talked about wanting to put the chickens back behind the house, but I think, but I feel like keeping them close to the farm, especially if we were to fence in that area, then we could let them free range a little, couldn't we?
Yeah, definitely. And it's so beneficial to have the chickens like relatively close to the food production as well, because all of the compost that you can get out of, you know, the hay from the laying boxes and just like the nitrogen that they're just
constantly like kicking up and
exactly.
And literally I could feed them with scraps.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like it's like a symbiotic relationship to have them nearby.
Tell me about your perfect world real quick. In a perfect world.
This coop and run would be like up at the top of the garden so that like the nutrient cycle would run down. But because there's so much overland water coming down this way, it wouldn't like, I wouldn't want to. So like if it wasn't,
well, not to mention the traffic.
Yeah, the traffic totally with the cars. But if it was more of a passive situation, then the, you know, chicken droppings and all of that nitrogen would soak into the ground and slowly move its way through the soil into the space. But because there's so much overland water, it could wash it out like while it's still really raw onto your veggies. It's just not a good look. So I think this is a great compromise to have it nearby. Oh yeah. So the beds here for the spice bush, mint, sunchoke, and asparagus are also rain gardens. So these are dug out. There's a quarter of a foot of gravel base and then a foot of engineered soil. And those would be just like this one, dug out, then berm up on the downhill side, and then plant those plants into the actual rain garden, just as another protected layer of like slowing down the water that's coming off the driveway. Okay, so now as we get closer to the house, around the foundation of your home, kind of like what we discussed before, these are basically like in-ground gutters. So this would be like a swale essentially that's dug along the foundation and then filled in with all different shapes and sizes of boulders essentially, but the grade would be a slow 2% drop down, and then once you got to the hill a little faster to a catchment basin at the bottom here. So initially I had this all running towards the back, and I realized
towards the creek.
And I realized that actually you don't need to do it all the way back, and that leaves more access here on the side. If these are run, if the gutter, all the roof water is run in these inland gutters to two like larger basins that are essentially rain gardens as well, and they're planted and there's rocks in them, and you have a level berm overflow, that this will flow to the creek, and it'll be, I think, slowed down and spread out enough that it's not gonna cause huge issues. And then the water that still comes through here, like the way that we're addressing that is by catching as much of it as possible in all of this dense vegetation and hugel culture beds beforehand. So this would be my first suggestion, like the first iteration of what you do with the water is have essentially these dry creek beds ending in a basin with a berm on the downhill side so the water can overflow. And then if you're still finding that it's like pooling in this area and moving through here, then you could add an intentional like spillway
to get it right into the creek.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, so this would be planted. Let me see if I can find that label.
The crepe myrtles and and muley grass.
Yeah. So here we've got as the foundation in front of that in-ground gutter. There's the liatris, crepe myrtle that you said you had, mealy grass under there, and this is an anise, which is I think gonna look really cool in front of your house. These are Florida Sunshine is the variety that's like a little bit chartreuse, and it's just a really beautiful backdrop. They're also really beautiful cuttings to mix in with like bouquets. So there's 3 here, 1 there, and then on either side on this side. And then in the middle here is pineapple guava.
Ooh, Good.
Yeah. And then we've got some black-eyed Susan right in here. And in the rain garden and swales themselves, I don't know where my label is for what I specified in there, but I'll find it and get back to you on that. But yeah, the idea is that these are planted out and rock are in there to stabilize them. Okay, so that's the foundation bed in the front. And then on the side, we've got all of these awesome cut flowers. So there's a couple more crepe myrtle, 1, 2, and then the hillside is just big swaths of cut flowers. So you've got mealy grass. This is little blue stem, which is another bunching grass. Giardia, echinacea. Let me zoom in a little bit more. It's easier to see. Echinacea here, butterfly.
You turned me into a flower farmer.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to get a booth.
Yeah, you should. And this is so awesome, like blooms throughout the year, and also like just great bird and pollinator like food and habitat. If you don't cut off all the echinacea, you know, the birds will go crazy for the seeds, that kind of thing. Here we've got butterfly weed, the host plant of the monarch butterfly. Cornflower here, which is a really beautiful blue flower, anise hyssop right here, yarrow under this crepe myrtle, and coreopsis right here. These are more blueberries, which love acidic soil under the canopy of the pines that are there, and some daylily, which all part of the daylily is edible, so that's a really fun one to have. And you know, this is existing foundation. So all of the plants that you have planted here, I've just pulled them out into a bed in front of the actual gutter. So there's a gutter right against the foundation, and then in front of that, some of the existing stuff you already have can be like
can just stay
through there. Exactly. So then here's the mandala garden, and there are buttonbush here and here, which is a beautiful little.
We have a lot of at our lake house, a lot of buttonbush.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So 2 here, 2 swaths of those here. More butterfly weed there. Here's the entrance to the garden, and Culver's root on this far side. And then this is more liatris here. So kind of just like a nice little quiet fading up into the woodland edge with like things that are a little lower on this side and then higher on this side to kind of blend it in. And it'll be something really pretty to look down on. Okay, cool. So then over here, we've got the gravel drive and this like formalized turnaround, and then around this beautiful oak, just doing some bottlebrush buckeye, which is a beautiful native shrub that'll really appreciate that dappled understory light, and 3 service berries, which are a delicious fruit tree that have a beautiful flush of white flowers in the spring. And then some just native shade garden stuff underneath. So this is Switchera, Tiarella, Acanthus, and Solomon seal all underneath here. So just a nice little woodland shade garden feeling. And then right in here underneath this oak, we have more kind of native shade stuff. So daylily right on the edge here, a bramble of wineberry, which is an edible, which is like a raspberry that fruits in the shade. It's really delicious and fun to have around. Hosta here. Christmas fern, which is a native dry shade fern, black cohosh, which is an awesome medicinal, and some more Solomon seal right in here. And then this is bloodroot, which is another woodland medicinal. Beautyberry, American beautyberry here, which is a great one to have around. It has like gorgeous purple berries on bare branches in the late fall, early winter, and you can also like bundle the leaves and dry them and burn them as like an incense that it's pretty good for keeping away mosquitoes.
Really? That's good.
Yeah, so that's fun. And then more bloodroot. And then as you get back in here, this is like a mulched trail with fallen log edging and native woodland garden. So that area here, and then the area back here where there's the yoga deck, and then this system of trails that kind of winds you through this part of the property and down to the fire pit. Instead of marking out all of the beds exactly within this space, I've given a list of what would work well with the overstory that you have. So American hornbeam, fringe tree, mayhaw, and Yopon holly are some trees that would fit into the mix. Shrubs, bottlebrush buckeye, beautyberry, sweet shrub, hazel, witch hazel, flame azalea, and arrowwood viburnum. All of those have really beautiful blooms at different times of year. And then the perennials, cohosh, wood anemone, columbine, wild ginger, Christmas fern, autumn fern, huichera, and May apple. So that would be throughout these areas. And kind of like how I would approach the build out of that is to do the clearing for the pathways first, and then work like from your path out into the rest of the forest. And like as you remove stuff near the paths, you can replace with these different species.
Well, so I had an interesting thing happen this past week. That? Well, I was listening to the radio in Carline because that's now a part of my life.
Yeah.
and they were talking about native species and how the Forestry Service is, actively fighting it in the different preserves and such. Yeah. And it just occurred to me that, well, maybe we have enough of a forest that we could potentially qualify for some of that. So I emailed the person right away, and she immediately sent me over our local person who said, "Oh, I can come out tomorrow."
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was all very quick. And I said, "Okay, great. Thanks." And so I walked him back past the workshop, and just past the fire pit, and he just stopped and he looked around and he was like, "You have all of the top 10 invasive species here." He's like, "I can point to, there's the kudzu, there's the wisteria, there's the autumn olive, privet. Like all of these things, the privet." Yeah. And he's like, we love private citizens who actually do want to do something like this.
Yeah.
But we don't have any money for it really, because we've sent all of our money down to South Georgia for rehabilitation after the hurricane came in. Yeah. Apparently knocked down a ton of native plants, and then the invasive species just took over because they had so much sun.
Oh yeah. Dang.
But he was like, "I'll go hunt for you." And he did, and he found a federal program. So we're gonna apply. Yeah. There's no minimum acreage. And they would either, I can't quite figure out if they would like write a check to cover the removal, or if they've got crews that they could send in. But yeah, it's really, really interesting.
Can you send that contact information? Because it's like such an ongoing thing.
It's a battle. It's crazy.
Battle. I know of one company that specializes in invasive removal in Atlanta, and that's it. And other than that, it's like there's not a lot of management plans happening. So that's exciting.
It is exciting. And he said, basically like everything is so built up. He did think that herbicide would be needed for some of that, like even after a company would come in and remove a bunch of the native species. He said, in 4 weeks, there will be new sprouts. So if you can time it right before winter happens, then like you'll protect the native species that you do want to come up in the spring, and you can still do a water safe herbicide that he also said, degrades quickly, but would kill the wisteria, would kill the any of those things, because they have that little evergreen, like the privet would come back up, that kind of a thing.
Oh yeah.
So, which, we don't really enjoy the concept of herbicide, but we also have a major challenge.
Exactly. And it's sort of like a means to an end. Like if you can do it the most responsible way possible one big time, and then keep things at bay because you've gotten in like if you've gotten ahead of it, then I feel like that's, a reasonable approach, because it's true. Like what's the alternative is that like, you're going to lose all these like beautiful overstory trees over time,
Right. I mean, we already are. We've had 4 trees fall just this summer.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's great. I think that it makes a lot of sense to use those resources. And keep me posted about it. I hope
I will.
You guys qualify. Yeah. Awesome. So
Fingers
once you get all that out, here's the list.
Here's the list to put in.
Exactly.
Very cool. And so real quick, in the herb garden area, are those mulched paths?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So here I did mulched paths because it's a little less sun. I felt like, they're also like perennial beds. Most of these, or actually all of these, are perennial beds. So there's not as much like turnover of crops. And I thought that mulch would work well in this space.
Right. And that looks like it's going to be a beautiful view.
Yeah.
From the kitchen and our main living space,
Yeah.
that's literally like our front yard if you think about it.
Totally.
Our house is kind of backwards in that way. And then you have a flagstone patio.
Yeah, I put this in. I just thought it would be nice to have this, maybe there's like a couple of chairs and a table kind of overlooking the space, kind of like a secret garden feel.
Yeah.
I just love like a little room within a garden. So that's what I was thinking here. And also like a nice formal entrance, like of an arbor here into this garden.
And do you have plants that would trail up that arbor?
Yeah, I do.
Suggested?
So we've got passion flower.
Yeah.
And then on either side, kind of flanking it to create like an opening, is Rosa rugosa, which is an awesome rose that is really good for harvesting rose hips. And then lavender on either side as well. And then as you go in, you start to get these big swaths. And this is sort of like a suggestion of things that, I use / I know are, relatively easy to grow. But you might, since this would be related to like your home apothecary, you might find that like you need way more echinacea than it's, so you can adjust kind of like the amount of grow space, like based on what you're going to be making. But essentially there's bergamot, oregano, thyme, sage, rosemary, that's yarrow.
Similar to the roses.
Yeah. Calendula. On this side, we've got chamomile, motherwort, mullein, holy basil, and meadowsweet. And then around here, southern ginseng, where it gets a little shadier, and then stinging nettle, kind of far away from small passerbys. So that's,
you've given me like a whole list of plants I need to just go look up. And
yeah, totally. And if you do look them up and you have questions or figure out that it's not something you want, I'm available for revisions and swaps for plants for sure.
Great.
And then I did want to mention, I've got a note here where I specified that in the rain gardens, the dry creek bed rain gardens, so that's the gutters and then the gardens that they terminate into, are lobelia, muhlygrass, culver's root, and joe pye weed.
Okay.
So those are things that can be planted among all of the stones in these spaces.
Okay. So I've got my species list. I've got this beautiful planting plan, timeline, and budget. I mean, this is beautiful. And I wish I could have it just done in a month. Right.
Yeah.
But I would hire a lot of people and maybe spend as much money as what I just spent on a house build. To do it all. So what are your recommendations kind of in that value engineering concept that permaculture has?
Totally. Well, you can never start like too soon and just building soil. So anywhere that is denoted planting space versus lawn, you could do like a really inexpensive way to start like transitioning these spaces that have been mown into actual like gardening areas or like cut flower gardens, is to sheet mulch. So and suppress all of the weeds. Yeah. And that can, if you do a really thick layer of sheet mulching, you can leave it for 6 months. And when you come back, you'll have like gorgeous soil that's just ready to go. So I would say like order of operations is to start building soil where, these beds are going to be going in. Another really important thing to start with is the water. So just getting these in-ground gutters situated and routing the water in an intentional way through the space by installing the in-ground gutters with these basins, and then also the 2 rain gardens that are up at the top.
Up at the top, right?
Yeah, it would be a great way to start slowing that flow down and getting like the water under control, so that if you do start with planting, it's not like washed away or inundated with an overflow. Always like delineating pathways is a really helpful way to get started, because it gives you a sense of like how to define the space. So especially in the woodland areas, just like bush hogging these trails or mulching in place and lining the pathways is a great way to do it. If you are going to go the direction of like, you know, invasive management with herbicides, then I would wait to plant like most things.
Yeah.
I don't know how controlled they would do it or what it exactly looks like, but if like this herb garden, I would probably just wait, or this stuff would probably be okay.
Be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's another thing that you could start with, is planting fruit trees, even just like kind of directly into the space you have now, because those take so long before
they're going to take time.
Produce.
Yeah.
Anything that's kind of like rough on the land, like digging for water or hardscape, those kinds of things, I would always recommend doing first, and then working backwards to the most like tender, like annual stuff. Building out these hugel beds though would be great to do now, because they'll help mitigate the water issue that's happening.
Right. I think that's going to be a garden party.
Awesome.
Yeah. Like, you know, from some of the people from the Regenerative Backyard Blueprint course who live in the area were definitely on board. They were like, I want to experience this, and I want to like play with somebody's yard before I start messing up my own.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, hey, like come on over to our house. So
yeah,
that's really interesting. We could see how, you know, start with the first one up at the front and the rain gardens maybe even, and just see how long those take and how it comes together.
If you need any help with like layout or just resources for building these things, I don't mind at all like being a resource. And if we like a site visit would help to just kind of like map all of this out in space a little bit, that's something we could definitely do.
That would be really, really helpful, I think.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And then budget is a great question. And I could, you know, give you like a conceptual budget, like cost this out very like generally if you wanted to see like the full picture. Of course, that would be the budget of us installing it. But I would say like a good sort of like marker of budget is like $10 to $12 per square foot.
Okay.
Space, you know?
You know, maybe it's making a plan so that we just do the square footage around the house first.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
It can be broken out by area, like priority areas for sure, because this area around the house is pretty much contained unto itself as a system. And then like this orchard is kind of like its own system. The annuals are like its own system. So yeah, you could absolutely divide it by like geographical area.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It feels less intimidating.
Yeah.
when I think about it in that way, like literally, we've been here for 3 years, and I have tried to be very careful and mindful about making, you know, avoiding having one more invasive species come in.
Yeah.
And this summer, as I was lax in my garden, the chickweed has just taken over, and kudzu is here. And I was actually like walking around with the baby the other day and thinking, gosh, how am I going to do this?
Yeah, I need that.
Yeah. So it's nice to have that encouragement of like, you know, it's $10 to $12 a square foot. Now just think about which square foot you want to focus on. And that's really nice, because like, you know, maybe really what I'm going to need to get through all of this is that meditation mandala.
Yeah. Exactly.
We're going to have to focus on that first. Yeah.
That's more of a priority.
So big thanks to Shades of Green for being patient and working with us and being so thoughtful with our land. And thank you, Regenerative Backyard Blueprint and Brandy, for putting that together, because it has been such a wonderful resource to help open an amateur gardener's brain like mine. And if you have thoughts or questions about permaculture, please leave them in the comments below. I know Brandy and her team are going to be looking too, and they can always answer as well. Do follow them at Shades of Green, and tune in next time.